Hello, my name is Sauvik. I am an assistant professor at CMU, and today I'm here to talk to you about AI and privacy. So people are really apprehensive about how AI will impact privacy today, and that's perhaps not surprising when you look at the news. Every day it seems like there's a new article about some new AI thing creating some new privacy violation. Whether that be about law enforcement using facial recognition technology to identify BLM protesters, whether that's about deepfake pornography, or whether that's about questions around consent with the use of personal data and the training of large language models like we just heard about. And so unsurprisingly, a recent survey with 10,000 people from all over the world found that most people believe that AI will result in less privacy in the future. And in fact, among 11 areas of life asked about, they are among the most pessimistic about AI's impacts on privacy. So what can practitioners actually do who work on AI products and care about privacy actually do? Well, there was this recent survey of 84 guidelines from all over the world of what it means to create ethical AI technologies. And privacy was one of the 5 most commonly cited principles. And yet, there's also more recent work that shows that practitioners really don't have a whole lot of support or guidance for what AI-specific privacy work might mean. And at the same time, there's also a great deal of hype around what is real and what is speculative in terms of what AI can do. And so it's hard to tease apart what's a real risk and what's a speculative risk. So the foundational questions we're asking in this work is, how does AI change privacy risks, if at all? And are practitioners equipped to recognize and mitigate the privacy risks that might be introduced by incorporating modern advances in AI technologies into their products and services? And I want to acknowledge here the dialogues about AI and privacy are not new. In some ways, the two are inextricably bound because many of the fundamental privacy problems that we talk about is the sort of unwitting collection and processing of personal data through algorithmic means. But at the same time, it's clear to anybody who's been paying attention that there's something about modern advances in AI and ML that have fundamentally kind of like changed their capabilities. But what's not totally clear right now is how these changes in capabilities, how these advances in capabilities and the requirements of AI therein have potentially changed the surface area of privacy risks and privacy work. So we started by trying to figure out if there's something new here. So we scoured through a popular AI incident database, found over 300 privacy pertinent incidents. We manually analyzed these to see if the privacy risk described was either created by the capabilities and requirements of AI, exacerbated by them, or not meaningfully changed at all. And we used Solov's popular 2006 taxonomy of privacy here as a baseline because we wanted to understand, we wanted like a crystallization of how we conceived of privacy prior to these modern advances to see if there was something challenged in that taxonomy by these incidents. And very briefly, we found that 93% of the incidents described involved a situation where the capabilities and/or the requirements of AI seemed to either create or exacerbate the described risk. Not going to go through all of them here, but I'm going to describe a few. The first is physiognomy, a pseudoscience that purports that one can understand a person's character or personality traits from analyzing their physical attributes. For example, a picture of your face. Physiognomy has long been debunked, but AI is ushering in a renaissance of it. There are many classifiers right now, for example, that will claim that they can predict if you're gay or straight, a criminal or not, just by getting a picture of your face. AI is also creating new types of distortion risks or methods to spread false information about people. 4chan users, for example, have used deepfake technologies to create videos of celebrities saying homophobic and racist things, which I'm sure none of you predicted when I said 4chan. And of course, surveillance. Surveillance has existed long before AI, but AI dials it up to 11 by incentivizing the collection of ever more personal data for the promise of being able to use it and do something with it automatically. There are reports, for example, of the Chinese government using CCTV feeds with facial recognition to automatically identify and track religious minorities, as well as of private enterprise like Amazon tracking remote workers and penalizing them for doing things like taking breaks. Can you imagine the audacity? Okay, so hopefully I've provided some evidence as to why we think modern AI does appear to change privacy risks in some way. And next, we wanted to understand if the practitioners working on AI products and services were equipped to recognize and mitigate these risks. So we interviewed 35 practitioners who work on all kinds of AI products and services in all kinds of companies and all kinds of roles. And we asked them about their privacy work for specific AI products and services that they worked on in the past 6 months. And our analytic focus here was on three things. First, how aware were practitioners of the AI exacerbated and/or created risks that we talked about just a moment ago, like when defining privacy work for the actual products and services that they worked on? What motivated and inhibited this work, and what affected their ability to do the work? So let's start with awareness. We found that when defining privacy work for their products, practitioners used the language of harm reduction and risk mitigation, centering on users. However, when they defined and situated these risks, it was relatively non-specific to the capabilities and/or requirements of AI. For example, a technical lead discussed the need to make privacy-respecting machine learning models that would only be able to analyze data in the aggregate. A researcher expressed the inherent tensions of implementing tight controls around data, but providing enough access to stakeholders to improve understanding of product impacts. A software engineer stressed the importance of siloing data so that it's not used unexpectedly. We want people's information to be safe and not used for anything else other than actually recommending them clothes. And here's the part of the talk where you're like, hey, we already do all of that. And you're right. Nothing really has changed. Practitioners did not express awareness of, for example, memorization risks or training data reconstruction attacks. They viewed their privacy work in the same way that they always viewed their privacy work, and this was in part because the structures to think about privacy remain relatively generic and non-specific to AI. So in terms of motivation, we found that practitioners exhibited three key motivators for their AI privacy work. The first was alignment with business interests. A privacy-focused AI product these days is a competitive differentiator because so few of them are. The second was social responsibility. Some practitioners expressed that their privacy work was aligned with their personal values and they brought that to work. And the third, of course, was compliance. We do it by choice. We don't do it by choice, we do it because it's enforced. But we also found that practitioners faced way more inhibitors and motivators for their AI privacy work. One, for example, was that compliance requirements were super rigid, reducing incentives for doing any sort of product-specific privacy work beyond kind of what the compliance requirements mandated. One participant described being met with resistance anytime she advocated for privacy work because the product was already compliant. Others expressed incentive issues. So one person described how caring about privacy work would slow them down, making them seem less productive relative to their peers, which would ultimately lead them to getting promoted slower and having slower upward career mobility. Still others expressed product-specific opportunity costs. One person said that taking care of privacy basically means less data, which basically means a less performant model. In sum, for motivation, we found that AI privacy work is largely driven by meeting non-AI specific compliance standards, and that practitioners face many more inhibitors than motivators at both the micro and a macro scale. And finally, we wanted to understand what constitutes and affects practitioners' ability to do AI privacy work. So people started by expressing the need to negotiate the value of privacy relative to other product design goals, of course. One person said, for example, it's really just going the extra mile of, is this really meeting users' concern here? Because the bare minimum is not very good. Another person talked about training, so the need to undergo this training, but that this training was pretty general and non-product or AI specific and thus generally kind of useless. Still others mentioned consulting references and/or other teams and experts to understand best practices and how others handled privacy questions in the context of AI. In general, however, we found that practitioners faced ability barriers for privacy work as well. First, practitioners lacked this holistic view of the data pipeline, which made it difficult to assess how their products might contribute to downstream privacy risks. One person said, the technology is often really sophisticated and there are all kinds of AI and policy controls, like who can and can't see the data, who can and can't update the model. And so it becomes difficult to tease out the true risk. Moreover, we found that while practitioners discussed lacking guidance for AI-specific privacy work, they often were in situations where they had to rely on individual judgment. One person, for example, said, I'm doing more computer vision stuff, it's pretty new, and so not a lot of people have the answer. It kind of comes down to making my own decision and to know if it's going to be good or risk compliance issues. So in general, we found that practitioners kind of lacked the tools and the resources necessary to do this AI privacy work. So to quickly summarize, AI technologies we found seem to meaningfully change the surface area of privacy risk in products and services that include them, but we need better systems to help practitioners recognize and mitigate these risks. And here's where I should mention that the work that you've heard today is part of this bigger NSF-supported initiative that I am leading, which is all about how to build tools, artifacts, resources, whatever, to help practitioners with AI privacy work. We really want this to be useful to those of you who are working on this on the front lines. And so I'd really love to get in touch and hopefully collaborate. So please reach out if any of this sounds useful or terrible, because we want to know. I'm not just saying this, by the way, it's sort of the reason I'm here. And with that, I'll take some questions.